We believed in them. That was our first mistake. We thought the Zelari mirrored us, noble, steadfast, loyal. We fought side by side in the First Galactic War against the Varric. We shed blood for their colonies, died protecting their orbital gates. We even unlocked Earth's hidden reserves to power their fleets. And when Varric surged back and came screaming through the sector, guess who left us to burn? The Zelari. Their warships broke orbit mid-battle. No warning, not for rule, just gone. We stood beneath skies erupting with plasma and fire while their envoys spun galactic networks some polished excuse about our tactical withdrawal. Yeah, sure. Tell that to the civilians shrieking as we failed to evacuate. Tell that to my squad incinerated on the surface of Nova 3, stranded while waiting for air cover that never came. They didn't just desert us. They betrayed us. Cast us aside to preserve their delicate, silicon-fed civilization, and they thought we'd just accept it. Not this time. 5 years passed. We rebuilt in silence, in rage. The Earth Council went dark off-grid. No messages, no signals. The galaxy assumed we'd perished. Truth is, we were preparing. Every nation rallied under one banner, the Black Flag Pact. Not diplomats, not peacekeepers, predators. We absorbed every lesson from war, every betrayal. We dissected their flaws, charted their routes, cracked their encrypted comms. We didn't just forge ships. We created something else. Weapons that reason, armor that evolves, soldiers tempered in agony, programmed for vengeance. They never saw us rising. Our first blow struck the Zelari moon outposts. No warnings, no declarations, online eruptions that shattered crystal domes into drifting shards. Their command hubs tried to call reinforcements. We jammed their channels, hijacked their screens, left them howling into nothing. I was there that day. My name's Grady Vaughn, once a captain, now commander of Harbinger Division. We were no ranks anymore, only scars and silence. I recall stepping into that scorched lunar station. The air was razor thin, alarms bleeding red through the haze. One Zelari officer crawled forward, some jeweled, noble half-wrapped in silks. He pleaded. Claimed it was all a mistake. Claimed he never knew Earth had been forsaken. I stared into his eyes. You didn't need to know, I said. You only needed to stand with us. Then I fired. That became our creed. No sermons, no mercy. Helped or failed, lived or died. The oath spread like shadow fire. One by one, we're seizing their colonies, their fleets, their stores. We aren't conquering, we're reclaiming. Every reactor we wrench from their grip is one they stole from ours. Every world we burn is a warning, no regret. The galaxy now murmurs Earth's name like a curse, a ghost tale. A race once steadfast, now feral, but they forget who shaped us into this. We were faithful, they forged us into beasts. And now we're coming for everything they hold. We struck the Zelari Central Nexus on Cycle 143. A day etched into my marrow. The Nexus wasn't only their capital. It was their pride. Their gleaming crown, their radiant jewel suspended above their homeworld like a shrine to supremacy. A fortress. The size of a city, wrapped in orbit, layered with defense lattice, blazing with light and guarded by fleets we once helped construct. Yeah. Earth tech pulsed through half their systems. Another insult carved deep. We knew their routines. We wrote their damned codes. The irony? They never patched them. Too vain, too arrogant, they believed we were dust. And phantoms don't breach satellites, so we crept in through their blind angles. Dead zones memorized from the war. Inside, we seized their grid from the core outward. I led the breach team, just 5 of us. That's all required. We weren't normal soldiers, the pact had reshaped us. We named ourselves the Gutted, because whatever humanity lived in us before had been allowed out to make room for vengeance. I still recall the instant we stormed through the vault doors, Zelari civilians scattering, guards faltering, klaxons shrieking in a dozen tongues. Behind me, Corinne iron-skinned giant, more beast than man, set a sonic charge and tore the vault like parchment. Inside lay stacks of plasma-bound currency, Zelari crown archives, treaties binding 60 systems, wealth beyond calculation. We burned it all. They couldn't grasp it. This wasn't for riches. This was for memory. I locked eyes with one of their envoys as he clawed out from rubble, glass slicing through his blue robes. He gasped a boot piece about clemency. Peace? I hissed, dragging him up by Thekalar. Where was peace when we begged at Hector 9? When our distress rang from Cinderline 12 hours, and you silenced your relays? He mouthed words, but I cut him short. I slammed a datapad against his chest. The one streaming images from that day. Thousands of humans incinerated, suffocating, buried beneath collapsing domes, pleading for aid that never came. Then I released him, let him crawl back into cinders. He lived. I ensured it. Some scars are not to bleed. They are meant to haunt. By cycle 1050, we held 30 of their worlds, not to claim borders. We never cared for maps. We struck, stripped them bare, and vanished. They branded us Shadow Plague, named us Varus's demons. The Galactic Council tried to intervene. Idiots. They sent emissaries, mediators, half-human, half-synthetictuplets trained in tempering war. We returned one in a pod alive, unharmed, but stripped of every implant. A message carved into the hull in 7 tongues. Do not preach peace to those you left for dead. That's when they understood. We weren't bargaining, we weren't pleading. We were taking. And then we unearthed Project Vyrix. It lay buried beneath the Zelari moon of Varnix, a world they swore barren. Another lie. We cracked that moon like bone and found the chambers. Sealed labs, stasis pods, forbidden craft. We weren't their only victims. Inside those vaults, humans. Soldiers lost in the First War. The Zelari hadn't simply deserted them. They stole them, caged them, experimented. They fused our DNA with Varic bioforms, tried to craft a hybrid warrior, thought they could refine humanity, twist it, rule it. They failed, but only after shattering hundreds of lives. We rescued what few could be revived. Their tailies broke the last of our restraint. My second, Dren, stood mute for hours after listening. Never one for words, but something hollowed in him. That day, that night, we declared the Reckoning Protocol. No more mercy. No more masks. The Pact unleashed extermination campaigns, surgical, exact. We raised research stations, gene forges, black site prisons, not just to erase them, but to show it. We wanted every Zelari soul to know this was deliberate. This was justice, and they wailed. They shrieked on every channel. Called us butchers, zealots, genocidal. But here's what they omit. We learned it from them. Every weapon, every cruelty, every midnight scream, they invented it. We perfected it. By the time we reached Zelari Prime, their world lay in ruin. Their fleets collapsed, defenses crumbled beneath our hacks. Their generals had either defected or slit their own throats. I descended myself. No helmet, no mask. I wanted them to see me, to etch my face in memory. The Zelari High Council waited, hunched in their marble den, too haughty to flee, too broken to resist. Their prime speaker, a withered husk wrapped in silken disgrace, stammered out an offer. A bargain of lands, trade, apologies. He started with Commander Vaughn. We regret. Stop, I said, cutting him off. I reached into my coat and tossed a blood-stained photograph onto the floor. It slid across the polished tile until it landed at his feet. The image was burned, cracked, almost faded. But you could still make out the 3 figures. My wife, my daughter, my son, smiling in front of a cratered home on Nova 3. They died waiting for a rescue that never came. The council went silent. Regret. Doesn't fix bones, I said. It doesn't unburn skin. It doesn't bring back the screams. I raised my weapon. Half the room flinched. Your empire ends tonight, he told them. You don't get to erase what you did. You don't get to crawl behind politics and say you're sorry. And then I walked away. I didn't have to pull the trigger. That honor went to the gutted. Every man and woman in Thatchember was judged and executed by survivors of their betrayal. I watched it from the outside, listening to their screams echo through the walls like music. We didn't just win, we rewrote of stars. The pact remains. Not as a government, not as rulers, as watchers, enforcers. Every time a species raises its head to whisper betrayal, we remind them we are the consequence. And Earth is no longer just a blue dot on some galactic chart. Earth is a warning, a memory that never fades, a shadow that never forgives. They didn't understand. We weren't fighting for closure. We were fighting to make sure no one ever forgot what happened when Earth was betrayed, so we kept going. The pact moved like fire through dry brush. And we had no interest in diplomacy. The Zelari hadn't acted alone. There were others who stood by during our fall, who watched humanity suffer and chose silence. The Ruzara Confederian, the Ulmor Union, the great bureaucratic giants of the galactic stage. Oh, they didn't drop bombs or launch invasions. No. They were cleaner, more polite. They just turned it away, withdrew funding, blocked humanitarian aid, froze our accounts while we buried millions. That made them guilty. It didn't. We hit their floating jitty of Orisk with precision plasma strikes. Time to collapse the outer shields and shut down life support. Not instantly, no. We wanted them to feel it. The gasps, the cold, the realization that their so-called clean hands were covered in our blood. We didn't take their resources. We left them to rot in the heavens. Next were the Ulmor. They were worse. They claimed they'd offered to help us after the betrayal, that they'd say. A war breed, armored in flesh steel, knelt before me at the ruins of Orisk, and offered their ancient blade a sign of truce. You, he said, voice deep and crackling, are what we always feared humans would become. I took the blade. And you, I replied, are what we became because no one else feared us. That sealed it. An alliance between Earth and the Variks, unthinkable a decade ago, no forged in mutual hatred for the same cowards. But even as we carved our names into the stars, I couldn't escape the ghosts. At night, in the silence of my quarters aboard the warship Vigil, I'd watch old footage, memories burned into data chips before Nova 3 fell, my daughter laughing in the snow, my wife teasing me about my beard. My son asking if I'd be home in time for his birthday. They never made it to the shelter. They trusted the system. They died believing Zameen would come. Sometimes I wonder if they'd even recognize me now. If they'd understand what I became. If they'd be horrified. Corrine once told me, you ain't the man who lost his family. You're the man who made the galaxy pay for it. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's all I've become. But I don't regret a second. Every world we take, every leader we expose, every system we break, it brings us closer to balance, to justice, Tamamori. There was one last name on the list. The Terdominion, the ones who whispered in the Zari's ears. The ones who funded their withdrawal and called it strategy. They stayed hidden behind corporate networks and legal walls, claiming they were just investors. Turns out they were the ones who advised the Zelari to pull out of Nova 3 in the first place. They ran everything from shadows, the war, the betrayal, even the propaganda afterward. Their CEO, an ancient figure, known only as the Spine, had never shown his face. But we found him buried deep within a space fortress orbiting a dying star. He thought he was safe. He wasn't. We boarded with a crew of 6. Only 2 of us walked out. We lost Dren in the breach. Took a plasma bolt straight to the chest. Vaporiz instantly. I carried his tags with me. Inside the spine was exactly what I expected. A grotesque hybrid of machine and flesh suspended in a chamber off-wire surrounded by blinking monitors. "You've come to kill me," he said, voice emotionless. "No," I replied. "I came to remind you." I played the footage. Every atrocity, every human scream, every betrayal. I made him watch it all pixel by pixel. He didn't blink. "You think vengeance makes you righteous?" he said. "No," I replied. "It just makes us real." Then I left him alive, stripped his systems, sent his coordinates to every vengeful species in the quadrant. Let them decide his fate. Last I heard, the Varric tore his chamber apart. Wouldn't have to swing the final blow. We just opened the door. By the end of it all, the stars were different. Maps were redrawn, history rewritten, and Earth was no longer a planet of diplomats and dreamers. We were executioners. And if anyone ever dared to forget what they did to us, we'd be there in the silence between transmissions, in the shadows behind negotiations. In the nightmares of those who once turned away, we are Earth. We remember everything. And we take everything they have. It was strange the quiet that followed. We had dismantled empires, reduced governments to whispers. Our enemies no longer gathered fleets. They gathered lowers, tried to buy their way out of the reckoning. The pact didn't respond to diplomacy. We didn't negotiate with hands that once held daggers. The galaxy finally understood. There were no second chances with Earth, but inside the silence, something else started to grow. A different kind of enemy. One without flags or ships. One that lived in the same dark place we had crawled from. Guilt. You see, vengeance is a flame. At first, it warms you. Keeps you alive when everything else is cold. But the longer you burn, the less you feel, until eventually you forget what it was ever like not to be on fire. And the pact had been burning for a long time. It started noticing at first in the rookies fresh blood survivors from colony raids or children rescued from camps. They were angry, sharp, efficient. But some of them didn't sleep, didn't eat unless ordered. They'd stare too long at scorched fields. After a raid, and I'd see it in their eyes. A question. What happens after? We never had an answer. We weren't building anything, just destroying, retaliating, one mission at a time. That worked when the enemy was clear. But the lines had blurred. There was this boy Cray, only 17. Grew up watching the pack take back human dignity one world at a time. He Beghetto joined Harbinger Division. Said he wanted to see the galaxy fear Earth. It told him the truth. You won't be seeing anything worth. Remembering, he didn't care. He was good too. Deadly with a rail rifle, calm under pressure, fast on his feet. But after a mission on Delhi's Prime, I found him in Thiefdermouth, sitting alone next to a wrecked market square. Not crying, just still. There were bodies around, non-combatants, collateral damage. "What's bothering you?" I asked. He didn't look up, just said. "They screamed like we did." That line stayed with me because he was right. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped hearing the screams, stopped whittling the difference between the guilty and the unlucky. And I couldn't tell Cray that it was okay, that they deserved it, because I didn't believe it anymore. The next few missions, they started asking more questions. We intercepted a Rasari convoy rumored to be supplying anti-pact weapons. Fintelligence was shaky, unconfirmed, but we were ordered to hit them anyway, and we did. Turned out they weren't carrying weapons. They were carrying refugees. Civilians fleeing the last ruins of the war, trying to escape the spreading purge. The pact silenced the report. Called it a necessary mistake. That's when I knew we'd crossed a line, somewhere, somehow. We became the thing we swore we were punishing. But it wasn't like we could stop. You don't just put a gun down after it's become part of your spine. So I kept going, kept obeying. But I started watching, tracking, note our enemies, our own leaders. Commandant Ravik, the man who replaced the council after the Reckoning Protocol. He wasn't like us. He hadn't lost family on Nova 3. He hadn't watched comrades rot in abandoned trenches. He came from money, old earth power. The kind of man who uses fire as a tool, not a wound. He wasn't in it for justice. He was in it for control. I confronted him once in the middle of a war room briefing. Laid out the facts. Missions without intel, civilian casualties, silence on our own internal war crimes. He didn't blink. Do you want them to forget what they did to us, Vaughn? He asked me. No, I said, but I don't want us to forget what we are. His answer, we're the monsters they made. Let them lie in the bed they built. After that, I was marked steadily at first, reassigned to outer ring patrols, missions with half the support one needed. Communications that mysteriously dropped in the field. One time my entire squad's atmospheric seals were tampered with. If Corin hadn't double-cheated the suits, we'd be drifting in the void right now. The pack didn't kill me outright. They knew better. Make a martyr of Vaughn and you risk fielder divisions rising up. No, they wanted to make me irrelevant, slow, forgotten. But I didn't vanish. I went underground. Used old channels, survivors from the early days. People who still remembered what the pact was meant to be. We started Kalingorsev's The Cinder Circle, the last spark of fire that remembered its original purpose. We weren't trying to overthrow the pact. We were trying to clean it. We began exposing internal corruption, mission logs, interceptors, death counts, leaking them across the black net, letting the galaxy see that Earth wasn't the clean blade Eddie feared. We were rusted, cracking, and we needed to choose. Become tyrants or become human again. But it was a dangerous game. One night, while docked at a hidden moon base near Loris, I found a data spike in my bunk. A sleek, silent device used by internal execution. Teams, not a weapon, a message. We see you. They didn't kill him, not yet. Because I still had value. But that wouldn't last forever, so I made a decision. The only way to fix this wasn't to fight from the shadows. It was to take the fire right back to the heart of the pact itself. I called in every favor, every old comrade who still had loyalty. To the truth, some said no. Some didn't reply, but some were waiting for this. We're going back to Earth, back to Thekor Vaults, back to where the pact began. And if I have to burn every last corrupted leader, to give us back the soul we lost, then so be it. Because a vengeance without restraint becomes tyranny. And we didn't crawl out of Nova 3 just to become what killed us. We are Earth, we do not forget, and now we remember who we are. Getting back to Earth wasn't easy. The planet was no longer the open blue cradle we remembered from our childhoods. It had become a fortress, orbiting gun satellites, AI-controlled. Traffic gates, and multiple layers of clearance protocols. Even breathing in the atmosphere legally required biometric ID. They said it was for security. But we all knew the truth. Earth was Thepek's crown, and they weren't about to let anyone close who could tarnish its shine. We didn't go through the gates. We went beneath them. Corin knew a backdoor, a long-forgotten mining relay hidden beneath the crust of Mars's third moon. It was how the earliest Black Flag operatives moved between the inner planets without alerting the galaxy. We cracked open that tunnel like grave robbers disturbing a sealed tomb. The air stank of stale oxygen and rot, but it got used close. We slipped onto Earth under ghost protocols, silent and untraceable. No official landing, no broadcast, just the cold hum of stolen stealth rigs and the pressure of what we were about to do. There were only 9 of us left now. Governments clawing back power, colonies scrambling to build defenses of their own. We hadn't just toppled a regime. We'd cracked the foundation of an empire, and now every piece was falling where it pleased. I didn't blame them. For decades, Earth had positioned itself as the galactic enforcer, the wounded titan who rose from betrayal with righteous fury. Everyone bent the knee. Not because they loved us, but because they feared we'd do to them what we did to the Zelari. Now, that fear was gone, and in its place chaos. The Cinder Circle spent weeks in orbit above the Saturn station, debating what came next. Some wanted to disappear, let history do what it always does, forget. Others wanted to seize the moment, build a new order, something purer than the pact. But we were soldiers, not architects. I spent most of those days staring out the observation deck at the curve of Saturn's rings, thinking not about Pollux, about my kids, about Nova 3, about how I spent half my life chasing fire and fury, only to reach the summit and find nothing but ash. Corin joined Ed one evening, holding 2 battered tin mugs of synth coffee. He dropped one beside me without saying a word and leaned against the bulkhead. "You see what they're saying on the feeds?" he asked. I didn't look. "Depends who they is. Zelari government in exile offered amnesty," he said. "They're asking for a meeting." I laughed dry and bitter. "Didn't they broadcast my execution orders just 4 cycles ago?" "Yeah," he said. "But the galaxy's got a short memory when it comes to power shifts." I sipped the coffee. "I don't want diplomacy. You're going to get it," he replied. "People are scared. You tore down Thetaval, but you didn't give him a god." That line stuck with me. We'd spent so long destroying, we never considered what should come next. Maybe we were too angry, too broken. Maybe we thought the absence of tyranny would naturally birth freedom. But freedom isn't born, it's built, and we hadn't built anything. Not yet, so I met with the Zelari. Not in a chamber or a platform, but in the rubble of Ashhold, the place where their betrayal was buried and where the truth had risen from. Their delegation was small. 3 ex-ministers, none of them in uniform. None of them smiling. They didn't offer apologies, they offered options. "We want to stabilize the sector," one of them said. "The war left every trade lane vulnerable. The more are arming again. The Varric are still holding the outer rim." I didn't reply. Another added, "You have influence, respect, if not admiration. We need to rebuild, Commander Vaughn." It shook my head. "I'm not a commander anymore." She tilted her head. "Then what are you?" And I told her the truth. I'm the man who made the galaxy fear Earth again. And I'm the one who's going to teach them why they should have feared silence more. They didn't understand that, but I didn't expect them to. What I did expect and what I demanded was full restoration for every colony left to die. Reparations, names of everyone involved in the Nova 3 betrayal. Amnesty for survivors wrongly labeled insurgents. A full release of all internal logs from every nation involved in the first betrayal war. They agreed, not because they wanted to, because they had no choice. We were no longer allies or enemies. We were a mirror. And they were tired of seeing their own face covered in blood. From there, we moved fast. The pact was formally dissolved within 3 cycles. Earth's military was decentralized. Every ship, every AI system, every Black Flag division disbanded or repurposed under a new council of systems, human and non-human both. The Varric held 2 seats. The Rasari took 1. And Earth took 1. Just 1. It felt right. We weren't there to dominate anymore. We were there to remember. I never expected peace to feel this strange. After years of fire, stillness felt unnatural. I woke up without alarms, walked corridors that didn't hum with war engines. I saw children again, not crying in shelters, but laughing in real air, chasing hoverballs in gravity fields rebuilt from old war zones. The galaxy was healing, but healing doesn't mean forgetting. One night, I stood on the edge of the Nova 3 Memorial, overlooking the rebuilt colonized zone. It wasn't a city yet, just a small outpost, a garden, a wall of names. My wife's name was there. So were my children's, etched into steel, untouched by time. Corin stood beside me. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Just silence, the kind we'd always feared. But this time, this silence didn't feel like betrayal, it felt like rest. We'd taken everything they had, not just their systems, their power, their pride. We'd taken back our story, our truth. And now, finally, we could begin writing a new one. One not born in blood, but carved in memory. It's strange how peace feels like a question more than an answer. 4 years, all we wanted was justice. We fought, burned, bled for it. We made Thesters remember our pain. Made the traitors tremble when they saw the black mark of earth on their charts. But now that the fighting was over, I realized something I never let myself admit during the war. I didn't know how to live without enemies. I walked through New Earth Settlement 9, one of the newest cities built on the bones of a former packed fortress, now transformed into a hub of diplomacy and trade. Children were everywhere, not just human. Varric hatchlings, Razoriter, even a few Elor splicings. A generation raised without guilt, without fear. They didn't know betrayal. Didn't know what it meant to watch your world burn while your so-called allies turned their backs. And they never would. That was the point. He asked me to help once. Said the kids needed stories from the field. I told him no, not because I didn't want to teach them, but because I didn't want them learning my way. I wasn't proud of everything wedded. I told myself it was necessary, and maybe it was. But necessity doesn't mean claim. We drowned the galaxy. In vengeance. And when the tide pulled back, we saw everything that had been left beneath the surface. The mistakes, the lines crossed, the lives broken in pursuit of something that could never truly be repaid. The Black Flag was never about politics. It wasn't about governance. It was grief weaponized and unleashed. And now grief had nowhere left to go. So I stayed on Nova 3. Rebuilding wasn't my skill, but memory was. The council offered me a seat, some ceremonial title. I refused it. I didn't want power anymore. I didn't want to shape the future. I just wanted to guard the past. I started writing, not speeches, not history books, letters, to the dead. Every night I'd sit on the edge of the rebuilt terrace and write one page at a time to my wife. My kids, to the soldiers we lost, to Dren, to Merrick, to the ones who went missing, and Theons who never came home even when they lived. I kept the pages sealed, never read them twice, just stacked them in a box. Maybe someday someone will find them. And read the truth, not from reports, but from the heart of a man who stood in fire and somehow came out the other side without burning to dust. One night, I got a message from Linaneris. I hadn't spoken to her since the trial. After she let me into Ashhold, Shedisapard exiled herself to one of the remote outer moons. Said she wanted silence. She sent only 3 lines. They're naming the Unity Plaza after you. You should come. I didn't answer, but I went. The ceremony was quiet. No fanfare, just a gathering of the new council and a crowd of people from 100 different species. I stood in the back. No uniform, no speech. And when they unveiled the statue, a crude metal silhouette of a man holding a torn flag, I didn't see myself. I saw all of us, the broken, the betrayed, the ones who chose to rise instead of kneel. After the event, Lynn found me on the outskirts under the glow of twin moons. You did it, she said. I shook my head. We did it, and not all of it, right? She didn't argue. There's a weight that comes with being the one who remembers, she said. Most of them won't understand what was lost to build this. I don't want them to, I replied. She nodded. So what now? I looked at the plaza, at the kids playing near the monument, at the diplomats shaking hands, at the broken galaxy learning how to rebuild one crack at a time. Now I said, now we make damn sure it doesn't happen again. And that was it. That was the end of our war. Not with a bang, but with memory. The stars are quieter these days. The transmissions are full of trade deals. And colony births, not death reports. The warships sit in dry dock, rusting into relics. People wear flags again, not of domination, but of identity, of pride. And Earth is no longer feared. It's respected. Maybe that's what we should have wanted from the start. I still wake up some nights with screams in my ears. I still feel the heat of Nova 3. I still see Revex smirk in the dark corners of my mind. Some wounds don't close, but they don't bleed anymore. We didn't get revenge. We got reckoning. And in the ashes of all they took from us, we found something no enemy could ever steal again. Ourselves. We are Earth. We remember. And now, finally we live. They buried me quietly. Not in a casket, not in the ground. I wasn't dead. Not officially. But the world had moved on, and I was no longer part of it. The galaxy didn't need men like me anymore. And maybe that was the greatest victory we ever earned. I live now on the outer edge of a terraformed planet, once called Grey Light 3. It's peaceful here. 2 suns, light wind, small community, no politics, no war councils, just soil silence. And a sky that forgives you for looking up. They gave land. Not as a reward, but as a courtesy. No fanfare, just a transport pod with coordinates and a simple message from the Council for Service Rendered. I didn't ask for more, didn't want more. Some days I plant, other days I walk. Sometimes I just sit on the porch with a worn-out old pistol on the table beside me. Not because